Welcome, everybody. Give yourself a round of applause for coming out so early here on day 2 of Bitcoin Amsterdam. Woo! Yeah. This is a super special event. I've been to a bunch of these, and I think this is just a perfect blend of like it's just big enough, but also personal enough where we can all talk to each other. The size of this room is perfect, and I'm here with 3 absolutely special people building very, very special technology in the Bitcoin space. Super excited to speak with them. So I'm going to start over here to my right. We have Grafton Clark, head of growth at Vexl, if I'm not mistaken. Right? We have Mike Jarmuzz, who's responsible for funding everything you see in the Lightning world, founder of Lightning Ventures, CEO of Thunder Funder, and Julian Liniger, CEO and founder of Relai. So we have a lot of different perspectives here in terms of what it is to found a business, what it is to fund a business, keep it going. And we have people who have approached this differently on the panel. So we're just going to dive in. We're going to try to keep it conversational. I'll do my best to keep it on track here. But I want to start actually with Julian. So Julian, you're sort of going right down the middle with this. We're going to follow all of the regulation to a T. We're going to build something that's going to try to onboard the hundreds of millions of Europeans who can use this app. Please tell us a little bit about the challenges of building something that you want to basically reach everybody on this continent, in Europe.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Really great to be on the panel with you guys. Thank you for making it so early. There are different challenges. I think when we started, the challenge was definitely fundraising. You know, to get an idea going when you don't really have anything, and you need to convince people that this is a great idea, this is a great team, please invest in me, and this is going to be huge. This was a first very big challenge, and then it's all about bringing this product to market very quickly and actually solving a need and actually getting product market fit. That was the next huge challenge. With not a lot of resources, you need to get something done really quickly, really efficiently that actually solves a problem for people, and people want to pay for it, and people want to tell other people about it, so it grows because you don't have any marketing budget at the beginning, and you need to grow, otherwise you don't get to the next step of unlocking funding, etc. And now the biggest challenge after we have done a good kind of growth story in the last 4 years, and I've been able to fundraise, I've been able to find product market fit, and I've been able to grow. Now it's about scaling and this whole regulation topic, which it's now all around Twitter, and especially with Relai, we're getting a couple of good mentions on Twitter on that, like, why are you doing KYC? Why are your product is not really growing anymore? You're not really releasing or fixing the stuff anymore, because the real challenge now is that most of our resources unfortunately have to go into regulation, legal compliance, licensing, so that we can again unlock this next step of growth and can go to market actively in all the EU countries and reach all these 450 million something users that we want to onboard. That's in the end the mission, that we want to onboard all these Europeans. And unfortunately, it's unnecessarily evil to do that whole regulation compliance things. We just talked about it before. It's a massive work you need to put in, and doing this while also keeping the systems that hundreds of, tens of thousands of people are using, keeping that alive, keeping that performant, reliable, scalable, and also try to bring out new things, new features that keep people excited. To bring that all together with like a team of 35 people is a big challenge.
Yeah, and you make it seem easy. You're a very calm, collected individual, but I can only imagine what it's like to actually process all of this. I'm interested, Mike, so you've invested in Relai. So what do you see, when you look for a founder or someone to invest in, what do you look, what struck you about Julian that said, okay, this is a guy that's going to make something happen?
Well, Julian's an all-star, so I can praise him. I don't know, Forbes 30 under 30, all those fun things. He just killed it. I mean, knocked it out of the park. And the numbers speak for themselves. So when you look at the past quarter or month, and it's just hockey stick like growth, right? Every KPI that you can measure with Relai has been off the charts ever since I met Julian. He's one of the hardest working people. But then you also roll out an affiliate program, and then the affiliate numbers, you're like, you gave away how many Bitcoins in just affiliate stuff? But just somebody who's super determined, following all the rules. They were the KYC free option. He has no choice, right? People say, why are you regulating? Because we want to run a business. We want to be here tomorrow, and that's what he has to do.
Amazing. And so that's one route you could take for sure when you're trying to reach that many people on that level. Another route is the route that Vexl is currently taking, which is no KYC. It's a totally different approach. It's a peer-to-peer. They call it a social network, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly what we are.
Yeah, so let me not describe it. Let me let the man behind it describe it. Yeah,
so yeah, Vexl is a peer-to-peer, no KYC that leverages your real-world social graph that allows you to trade locally, face-to-face, with cash for Bitcoin, with people that you actually know. So friends and friends of friends. So we kind of do things a little bit differently because I do believe that KYC is a danger to everyone because it's not about whether, it's my personal information and I don't need to reveal that about what I do about anything. So we wanted to figure out how to enable local economies, local circular economies where people are based on trust in each other. So, yeah.
And I think it's important to sort of, appreciate the total spectrum of people approaching this differently, what they're building, something like Relai and then something like Vexl, so that people in the space have options for what they plan to use and even use both in a way. So I think that's super, super important to realize. I want to talk about reaching the rest of Europe. So right now you said, I think, Julian, about 10% of Europe maybe has Bitcoin. You're looking to reach that other 90%. It might be a little bit more in Switzerland. We've talked about maybe 15 to 20%. What efforts is Relai making to expand? It's, outside of what you have to do for regulation to be able to market in other countries, what are you doing on a day-to-day basis to try to reach more people and explain to them what Bitcoin is and why it's important?
Yeah, I think what's really important for the whole Bitcoin industry is to get out of the bubble in the next couple of years. It's like in the 90s, the nerds that did LAN parties and the freaks that were gaming on the internet, etc. These were as well 10-15% of the Swiss people or the European people or the US people globally. To get out of this bubble, of this echo chamber, also here, like everyone is in Bitcoin for years. There's almost no newcomers. I mean, hands up who is into Bitcoin for less than a year.
Less than a year? Okay, I like that. Yeah, raise them high. Yeah, appreciate that. And thank you for coming. I hope you're learning something while you're here. Appreciate that.
Great job. Congrats. But there is not many. So we somehow need to find ways to get out of our bubble. And that's also what we try to do with Relai now. I think most of the most of Bitcoin Twitter knows us at this point, but it's only 10% of Europe. 90% of Europe, they have no clue. Like if I talk to friends of my girlfriend, they have no fucking clue what Bitcoin is, what Relai is, what Coinbase is. They don't know all this shit. So we need to find ways. How can we, how can we reach these people? And I think through education, but education in a way is not like explaining how Bitcoin mining works, etc. But it's like, why is money broken? Why are you paying more for your goods and services every year? Why can't you, as a millennial, afford a house? Like, what the fuck is wrong with our world? Why are all these wars funded everywhere? Where's this money coming from? So I think that's important for people to understand. We need to make people understand what's wrong and why Bitcoin is a good solution for that, and not explain the technicalities behind it, etc. I think what we have also learned is that through influencers, like influencers go a very long way, and not necessarily Bitcoin influencers, but also like finance or general lifestyle influencers, because that's what people listen to. If I look at my sister, she is 14 years younger than I am, so she's like 18 now. She is just learning and buying and like behaving all on influencers. Like she's on Instagram all the time, and she's just learning and buying from whatever their influencers said. She looks up to these people, and so I think if we can orange pill and educate these influencers and work with them so that they help other people understand Bitcoin, and that can be good for business because they recommend then Relai for them to buy Bitcoin, but also for them to just understand. I think that's how we can grow out of this bubble and reach 50% or more in the next 10 years of the people.
Amazing. Appreciate that. And shout out to Joel, who's here, that helps, a bit of an influencer himself and also helps to do that reach out. Yeah. Mike, I wanted to ask you a little bit about when you're considering, so you see someone like Julian, he's a rock star, you see that. Does jurisdiction factor into your equation when you're thinking about investing in a company? So this is a Founders in Europe panel. We know that regulation across the world is different. Is this something you have to think about when you choose to invest in a company or not?
Well, first off, he's talking about expanding outside the bubble, right? And it's not a bubble, it's a cult. And the hands in the back, nice to have you. Please bring your friends for Outside Bitcoin. But Relai does marketing exceptionally well, right? Marketing and education, they put so much effort into daily videos and materials and 21 reasons for this and that. And to your point of founders approaching it differently, these two here, zero venture funding and not interested, right? Product of Trezor, works flawlessly, amazing UI, UX. We can't do anything fun in the US. If you have a US passport, you can't use anything. But really picking up and doing something totally different, right? Tons of venture funding, just hitting an inflection point. Totally different businesses with totally different models, different reach, and ultimately doing the same thing, right? Is selling Bitcoin in one way or another, or building these tools that bridge financial products for years to come.
Yeah, appreciate that. And Grafton, I want to talk a little bit about reach. If you wanted to comment first, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, we have a problem with Bitcoin education, for sure. And that is, no matter how much you learn about Bitcoin and study it, when you finally come around and you ask that question, well, how do I buy it? You get a lot of different answers. Here's my referral link, here's this. And each one of those introduces a hurdle for someone. Next thing you know, you're like, here, you have to take your electricity bill and your shoe size, your selfie, do all this. And most people go, well, okay, I don't have time for that because I wanted to throw $50 in it. So you're losing people when you introduce KYC, when you introduce these hurdles. So I think we have to do everything we can to make Bitcoin convenient and accessible for everyone. And that's why I believe that the future is actually peer-to-peer electronic cash without middlemen, without financial institutions, because that's the way it was intended to be, as a giant middle finger to financial institutions. So I think we have a long way to go with education. We need to be focused on how to make Bitcoin accessible for people. And I think that that's what we're trying to do with Vexl. We are a nonprofit. We do not monetize, as he said. It's hard to keep that business afloat because we're not asking for, return on, but people aren't getting return on their investment. We're trying to build something that I want, that you want, that we all agree that we need, because those hurdles are a lot for most people to overcome.
Yeah, appreciate that. On that peer-to-peer note, I think, Julian, what you guys do very, very well is you have to work within certain parameters, as we just discussed, certain regulatory parameters, but you do stuff like incorporating the Breeze SDK, which allows for people to use Lightning non-custodially within the Relai app. I commend you for that because in a lot of cases, I think custodial Lightning is sort of the default for people, whether it's Wallet of Satoshi or Blink Wallet or something like that. Why choose to make those sorts of decisions, have non-custodial Lightning? Are you making that effort to say, look, these are the parameters we have to work in, but we're going to make this as close to this ideal of peer-to-peer electronic cash as possible? Yeah, please.
Yeah, exactly. We always try to find the limit of how far can we go and still stay true to the principles of Bitcoin, which of course are ideally peer-to-peer, non-custodial, very decentralized, censorship-resistant, ideally no KYC. So ideally, I say, because that's
what everybody wants, right? Is no KYC, but.
Yeah, exactly. So there's no way, there's no perfect world. So we have to, strike this balance between what is legal, essentially, for what we want to do to reach hundreds of millions of people, and what's also true to the Bitcoin ethos. And that's why we choose. I think the most important thing, the two most important things that we see and that we also hear from our users, what they want, is it being Bitcoin only, like no shitcoins, no distractions, just Bitcoin only, just noise, not noise, just signal, just Bitcoin only, and self-custodial, so that in the end you really have the power. Yes, it's KYC, this is all, it's not ideal, but at least you buy the Bitcoin, you have the Bitcoin, you can access the Bitcoin, no one else. When we go down as a business, you still have your Bitcoin. When the regulators crack down in your country, you still have your Bitcoin, you have your 12 words, you have financial freedom. And that's what is truly, I think, the most important thing. That's something we will never compromise on. If we need to start compromising on that, we're in real trouble, globally, I think. But that's fortunately not on the horizon of regulations, etc. so far, at least in Europe and in the US. But that would be a very bad thing if we can compromise on everything, but not on the self-custodial topic.
Yeah, there's a line, and I actually want to come back to, we'll come back to regulation, bad thing, and whether we're moving globally in the right direction or not in just a second, so I'll put a pin in that. But I wanted to go back to you, Mike. It seems that you invest in a lot of companies. Like one of the other companies that comes to mind, I think, is Azteco, where, again, there's real deep principles with this, right? So as an investor, you obviously want return on that investment. So what does that balance look like in terms of saying, okay, I want return on this, but I really want to invest in companies that are getting this right, that have the ethos in mind, and are doing this according to the way that Bitcoin was intended to be used? What does that balance look like as you approach deals?
Well, a lot of the stuff is to comply creatively with local laws. So, it's nice to have non-custodial, peer-to-peer, KYC-free, everything. But that's also a real nice way to avoid burdensome regulations, right? By using the Breeze SDK wallet. He's not responsible for holding any of those funds, right? And it's amazing in Europe, and I love Europe, because all of the cool things that you have here, we don't have one like it. There isn't one Relay. There isn't one Vexl. We had local Bitcoins 150 years ago. But there isn't one of those things, right? So Azteco is doing the voucher model, right? They've found a clever gift card, just like you would buy to your local restaurant or whatever. But you're kind of like complying with what is your current jurisdiction to creatively be able to stay as true to those principles as possible, which was awesome with what Julian was doing, right? Because, you're a Swiss company and it's peer-to-peer, and, and eventually they kind of change, right? And you have to adapt.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, that creativity, I think, is super interesting in the space. It often doesn't get verbalized, but I think founders really deserve a lot for kind of figuring out, I won't call it loopholes, but those creative ways around things. I want to go to the team at Vexl. So you're not planning to monetize. And Vexl is part of the umbrella. It's one of the companies, or I guess it's a nonprofit technically, under the Satoshi Labs umbrella. So you're working with people who started Trezor and other legendary products in this space. So moving forward, I spoke with Vexl's CEO, or the head of the project, last week. She's just like, we're not going to compromise. We're going to try to get grants and other ways to sort of fund this so that people can use it the way it was intended. That can get tiring. So when it comes to the way the team is approaching this, obviously there's a lot of enthusiasm right now. You've created this sort of next generation P2P app. Mike, you just mentioned sort of like a new version of local Bitcoins, a place where you can exchange things, in person, your cash for Bitcoin or something. What does the long-term strategy look like? I know Leia has some things in mind that sort of haven't rolled out, so please share what you can.
Yeah, I mean, look, when we first set it up, is you look at who our co-founders are. Is I'm sitting on a founders in Bitcoin, but I'm not a founder. My founders are Stick and Slush, who are true Bitcoin OGs. The reason you have 12 or 24 words is because of BIP39, which is Satoshi Labs. So you look at what they've done for Bitcoin, and the ultimate goal is to make Bitcoin as convenient as possible for everyone. Originally this was, I think Slush's idea, and he says we need something to carry on to make local Bitcoins great again. And you look at that, and our initial funding is we are a gift from Satoshi Labs. We're not monetizing because we believe in this mission. We know that we need this. Everyone in this room will probably agree that it's a cool project and that, we do need this. So looking at how we're funding the project, I mean, you look at other great products like Signal. Signal is, a nonprofit. It's funded through donations. We're Bitcoiners. We believe in value for value. So I look at how, we will get funding is, look, I'm in this because I love what I do. I love my job. I love coming to conferences. I love meeting people. I've spent the last, 2 years traveling all over Europe extensively, going to local meetups, Bitcoin meetups, and talking to people and seeing, what do you need? What's the biggest problems you have in your community? How are you recommending people buy Bitcoin? And every single person has a different answer or solution. So we need to take something back, and I believe that when you start to provide value, that it will return. We do have some great, people who have helped us get here and get where we are. Looking at like OpenSats, I mean, they were very, generous to help us as well. But we are actively seeking fundraising and funds to support this project. So, if you use Vexl, if you have good like experience with it and you want to say thank you, we are grateful for that. If you want to, support us in buying a T-shirt or doing something like that, every little tiny bit helps because, we are 5 people and one big giant dog. So, we are a small team and we are building because we believe in this. This is my mission. I told, Frank earlier that the first time I actually heard about Vexl, I cornered my CEO and I said, I don't care. I want to work on this. This is what I want to do. Me being a Trezor, I have had extensive knowledge of the hardware industry of this. That is great, but that's not what excites me. What excites me is the very first line of the Bitcoin white paper, and that's what I believe in, and that's why I'm here sitting in front of you, and that's why I love this project, and why I think that it will succeed because I'm in it to win.
For reasons, yeah. Round of applause for that, please. Yeah. Yeah. I want to talk about the global state of affairs. I think we've seen here, we have a bunch of MPs and politicians here in Nashville at the last conference that BTC Inc. put on. We had Donald Trump, we had RFK Jr. Politicians are getting involved. I think people generally, I think people have mixed feelings about that. But some people say, well, maybe we're going to skip the then they fight you stage, right? Or maybe we're not. On the other side of things, we have what's going on with Tornado Cash and the Samurai developers right now. So I'm curious, as a founder, we still are in sort of precarious waters. We don't really know how different jurisdictions are going to start pushing back on Bitcoin, if they're not. As a founder, I would imagine that has to be a concern to some degree. As you said, there are certain things you're willing to sort of compromise to this point, but then there's a point where you're just not going to go over that line. How much do you have to think about this on a daily basis?
Well, a lot, yes, because in the end, we're still if you're a small startup, you're at the mercy of the regulators, the governments, what they decide, with the politicians. Unfortunately, we as libertarian thinking Bitcoiners, of course, we hate that, but it's unfortunately the truth. I think how to go about this is, and that's how Bitcoin can succeed, is that we need to get as many people from different levels of the society into our boat, right? So that includes politicians, that includes regulators, that includes investors, that includes employees, team members. Like the more resources we can combine behind this vision, the better. And that's what we see, for example, in the US much more than in Europe yet. In Europe, we have a couple of rather small startups like ours. We don't really have the resources where we can influence and lobby like the politics. But in the US, this is definitely happening with Bailey, like who is putting all of this together, who is raising funds for Trump and is educating and influencing Trump in an orange direction, And we have Kraken, for example, that is intensively investing in lobbying, in Washington, etc. I think that's very exciting, and that's also what we should do in Europe much more. We need to amass these resources. That's why we try to raise money from as many influential investors as possible, so that we can, grow more, get more users to self-custody Bitcoin, to spread the word, to also try to start influencing politicians and influence regulations, etc., so that we get a voice, we as the Bitcoin community get a voice on all different levels of society, including politics.
Yeah, appreciate that. Speaking of that, I recently spoke with Donald Trump. I don't know if anybody saw. He came to a bar in New York, PubKey. Shout out to PubKey. He came there. He told me personally, I was the person who's sitting at the bar interviewing him. He told me personally he's a big fan of Bitcoin. He loves Bitcoin. So, Mike, as an American, let's say Trump is elected. Is this going to have a positive effect, not only in America, but maybe worldwide? Will there be ripple effects of now Bitcoin is a more sort of embraced things by politicians, or an embraced thing by politicians around the world?
Maybe like supportive administration change is going to be great to put the turbocharge on it all, but like ultimately you can't stop it, right? I mean, Bitcoin's going to be great. Whether they, what do? They like stop printing and adopt a gold standard and like go back to like fiscal concern. Like what could really like stop Bitcoin at this point in time? But to think like we've went past the then they fight you stage, or there isn't going to be a then like we're probably as deep in the then they fight you stage as ever right now. It was just brutal in the U.S. I mean, companies couldn't have an operating account even in any possible way. And we don't have one product like this that allows us to do any sort of peer-to-peer, anything interesting there. So, I mean, just the last 3.5 years has been peak, then they fight you, right? And you say, oh, well, you know, you got ETFs and you got other things, and it's like, that's still kind of, and they fight you, you know, at the same time, as it's still like a really good and bullish and fun thing.
I agreed 100%. Yeah, that's sort of, Bitcoin within walled gardens like that. It's a whole different level of KYC and not what it was intended to be. I want to quickly talk about places in the world where crackdowns are much harder. We were talking a little bit about adoption in places like Nigeria, and you were surprised. You said, you know, we plan to make an app for people to use in Europe when we created Vexl, and now all of a sudden we're hearing from people in Nigeria, in Namibia, places where, Namibia not so much, but we know in Nigeria right now the state is not very enthused about Bitcoin or digital assets in general. What have you heard from Nigeria, and how are people using Vexl, or why are people using Vexl?
Yeah, I mean, just to elaborate on, I mean, you probably hear I have a southern accent. I am from Mississippi. So I left America in pursuit of something better. I moved to a post-communist country, which is Czech Republic, and I always kind of joke that there's nothing like a post-communist country that understands what it means to have freedom. And so when I look at what's happening in the world, and I look at places like Nigeria, is you have these people who reach out to us and they say, financial tyranny is here and it's coming, and it's long fingers are sticking everywhere, and so we must react, we must do something. And so you have these people who reach out to you and they say, I want to use Vexl, but there's no one in my area. And I go, well, yeah, every marketplace was empty when it first started, no matter if it was Facebook or Craigslist or whatever. But if you want it, you have to build it. You have to put things there. You have to say that I understand that it might not be as convenient as smashing the buy button on this thing, but we have these tools, and we've been trained to think that this is the easiest way to do it. But if you are in Nigeria, if you're in Namibia, you don't have the same infrastructure. So you have to look at ways to buy Bitcoin, and you have to look at ways to peer-to-peer. And because there are a lot of people who are unbanked, who cannot participate in this financial system because they need permission. And Bitcoin is permissionless. And I think a lot of these people understand that. And that's how you even told me about Bitcoin Data, I think.
Bitcoin Data is a program in Africa for African women. In places in Africa, women are not allowed to own property. So I teach in that program, and I help women own property in places where they're not allowed to. So this is obviously changing dynamics around the world.
Exactly. And I mean, if you look at something like even the BTC Pay server documentary, where you found people who never had a bank account and they were able to save for the first time in their life using Bitcoin to, buy dentures for themselves. So Bitcoin is really changing lives, and you can see that impact in Africa. You can see that in South America. You can see that in my neighborhood in Czech Republic. So I think that when you look at adoption, and if you want this, you have to make it. You can't just expect it. And that's why every single one of you is sitting here. You're here because you want to make Bitcoin a reality for everyone. And so when somebody from Africa contacts us and says, I want this, I go, well, yeah, me too, so let's build it, And that's what we've seen. We have Vexl communities, popping up in Namibia, in Nigeria, in Kenya, in Tanzania, and, this is something that they are not in the same system that we are in. And that's, like, talking about it it's amazing to see that love and the respect for what we all know is inevitable, is Bitcoin, so...
Love that. We have about 2 minutes left, so I want to give 40 seconds to each of the panelists here. I think the vibe here from, I've been over at the live desk speaking with people, and people seem really genuinely, there's this very warm feeling of people feel quite happy here. Obviously the production is quite great, but there's a lot of genuine enthusiasm here. So I want to end on a positive, sort of bullish note. Your biggest takeaway from this, or maybe just like a word of advice on how to move forward as a Bitcoiner in this world, maybe how to approach someone, educate them, whatever sort of comes to mind, sort of a last 20-second bullish call to action, maybe.
That's awesome. I love that. I think what I'm really bullish about is this, community that I'm part of for almost 10 years now, and it doesn't matter whether it's a bull market or bearish. Like right now, I think the analytics on Google, like if you look at Google search traffic, is very, very low on Bitcoin. Like in traditional media, Bitcoin is not a thing right now. The price is very stable, so no one really cares outside of this bubble or cult or group of people, but we are in a full room. It's a sold-out conference. Everyone is super enthusiastic, and I saw that in the last 10 years. Every conference I go, there is always this very hardcore group of people that will never stop. Like, we will never stop, and that's why we will succeed.
Love that.
So, if you're old, like Frank and myself, you remember the internet and the PC revolution. And if you went and took 100 random people at anywhere and said, "Who here has Bitcoin?" Maybe one or two hands would go up, and they really have it's in their PayPal, or they have an ETF, or maybe they have Litecoin. They don't even know what they're doing. You know, I mean, but then if you said, "How many people here have heard of Bitcoin?" all 100 hands go up, and that's such an exciting point to be. Right? Is you have something, it's like, who here's heard of the internet? You know what I mean? And 100 hands go up, and there's like 5 people that had a modem in their house, and actually used it at the time. So we're at such a pivotal point, and it's going to be crazy.
I love that. We have about 30 seconds. Take it home, Grafton.
Yeah, I mean, look, everybody from my grandma, as you said, now they've heard of Bitcoin, and they want to know how to get it, and they want to do it right. So Community is everything. Tell your friends, but don't, shove it down their throats. Bring them to meetups, visit meetups. Get prepared with the education that you need, because there are a lot of people who have dedicated their time to helping make Bitcoin education possible. So, we all have a favorite Bitcoin podcast. We all have this kind of stuff. Find the materials that suit you, but also look at what's happening with peer-to-peer. Get Vexl. Tell them, say, hey, if you want to buy Bitcoin, $50, okay, sure. Create an offer, start there. Talk to each other. If you've never bought Bitcoin before, then you can find somebody in a peer-to-peer trade who can help you understand Lightning, can help you understand hardware wallets, can help you understand the self-custody. So I'd say go to meetups, bring people to meetups, and most importantly is have fun. And we all remember why we found Bitcoin and how we got into it, and it's fun to share it.
Please give a round of applause to these legends sitting to my right. Thank you guys so much. We're going to make way for the next one.
Is your company ready for the next evolution in financial strategy? Bitcoin for Corporations is your partner in securing the future of your business. With exclusive membership benefits, our comprehensive masterclass, and a network of trusted service providers, we provide the insights and resources to help you incorporate Bitcoin into your financial strategy, ensuring stability and long-term value. Strengthen your business. Innovate with confidence. Bitcoin for Corporations, protecting your treasury and positioning you for the future.